Hi everyone, and welcome back to GameMaker Cast. It's Mickey, and in this video we're going to be finishing up the Lights Out game which we've been creating. There's not really much left to do. We need to do a main menu and a windscreen. Now I've already gone ahead and created all the required graphics, and if you're a Patreon supporter you can download them on the site to follow along. Anyway, let's dive right in by duplicating our init room. So I'm going to right click and say duplicate, and I'm going to name this to rm_menu. I'm going to make sure that it's underneath our init room because I want everything to happen afterwards after we initialize everything. Inside this room we should only have one object, and it's the init object. We can go ahead and delete it. Just make sure you are in the right room. Now I want to make sure that the background that we're going to be using is a sprite, and let's go ahead and import that. We'll say create sprite from images, and in here I want to choose the background.png. And once I open it, I'll just rename it SPR Menu Background. And I don't have to change the anchor or anything. I'll actually just close this. And in the room itself, make sure we have background selected and change the sprite to the SPR Menu Background. You can see that we have the nice background here. Now the next thing I want to do is add some buttons for this menu. I want to be able to give the user an easy, medium, and hard mode and a way to easily quit the game itself. However, I don't really want to code each button individually, so I'm going to be using some parented objects to help me with this. Now this means that we have a set of guidelines that we're going to have to use and just follow. Here, let me show you. First, let's create a new object. Actually, let's create a group to hold all these objects. We'll just name this group buttons. And here we'll create a object. We'll say object button, and let's just say parent. And in here we will add a create event. Let's also add a mouse enter, and we want a mouse leave, and finally we want a left pressed. So we'll go back to mouse and say left pressed. Now in the create event we want to make sure that we do not have any animation. So we'll set the image speed to 0, and then let's just set our sprite index to 0. And this is where the rules come into play. We're saying the first frame of our sprite needs to be whatever the idle animation is going to be. When our mouse enters the button, we will change the sprite index to equal to 1. So that means that the second frame is going to be hover. When we exit, we will then again set the sprite index to 0, which is back to idle. And then once we have pressed our button, we'll set the sprite index set to 2. So using these rules here, we can easily make a bunch of different buttons. Just we need to follow those standards. So if we go up to our sprites, I'm going to create a new group, and I'll call this group buttons. And I'm going to create a sprite from an image. I'm going to select the easy button. Let me just close my room so I have a little more room. I'll right click again, and I will do hard. And let's create two more here. We have medium, and we also have quit. Actually, let's import the last one, and we'll get to that one in the end as we have a retry. So I'm going to close everything just to tidy things up and go back to my sprite 3. Now I'll rename this as SPR button easy, and you can see that we kind of have 3 frames here. We have the easy, we have idle, we have hover, and then click. Now we're going to have to go into each one and make sure we click edit image. We'll say convert to frames. Then we have to put in the height and width of each one, which I believe is going to be 140 by, let's see here, what do we have, 47. Let's just zoom in to make sure that's right. And we went too far over, so let's do 139, and now we have 3 of them. And once we do that, we can hit convert. You can see that now we have those different buttons. The only thing we're going to do is make sure that the middle center is on each one. So I'm going to skip ahead as I'm going to rename all my sprites, and I'm going to convert them into frames. Okay, now that I have all my buttons done, what I need to do is come down to my objects. Then I'm going to create a new object. Let's say object button. Let's start with the easy button itself. So in here we want to make sure that we assign the sprite, which will be the easy button. Now the magic happens with the parent. In here we'll click parent and make sure we assign that object button parent that we have. Once we've done this, the events that the parent have, it's automatically going to come in. So the create, left press, mouse enter, mouse leave. So all that code that we've already created is in here. So what that means is if I go to my menu, and let me just add we'll just use the instances here. If I add in the easy button and I run my game, the code's automatically going to be in there for the hover and press. And you can see I've messed that up. So let me actually go back to my parent, and this is where it gets pretty awesome, is, you know what, we don't really need the sprite index, we need the image underscore index. So even though I'm going to change it in one place here, and I'll just make sure I change it in all of my events, you can see that I am on the parent, but when I run my game, all of the child objects are automatically going to be updated. So you can see I can hover, and I can click on it, even though nothing happens. Now, the only thing we really need to do is for each of these objects is we're going to have to decide what happens when we have a left release. So in here, we'll do mouse, and let's do left release. So for the easy game, or sorry, for the easy option, all I want to do is set my global.game underscore difficulty to 1, and then say room, go to, and we want to go to rm underscore game. Now, if you've kind of forgotten how this works, is the game difficulty is a multiplier. So if we change that to 1, 2, or 3, that will give us the different game difficulties itself. So easy should be a 3x3 grid, and you can see it is indeed. Now let's go ahead and let's duplicate this easy button, and let's rename it to medium. And let's make sure we spell medium correctly. We'll assign it the correct sprite, and then in the left release, we'll just give the game difficulty of 2. And while we're here, let's do the hard. So we'll say object button hard, assign the sprite, and a left release, the game difficulty will be 3. And let's make sure that we go to our menu and we add these buttons in. So we'll add easy, medium, and hard. And now when we hit play, let's try the hard mode. Should give us a 9x9 grid, and you can see it's pretty big, so you can have some fun playing with this. Now the other thing I want to do is give the user an easy way to quit the game. So in here, all we have to do is duplicate this button again, and instead of saying hard, we'll say quit. Make sure we assign the correct sprite. And when the left release happens, instead of going to a room or changing the game difficulty, all we need is game underscore end, and we'll make sure we add it to our menu, and this will actually quit the game itself. So when we run it, once it comes up, if we hit quit, you can see everything closes, and we're basically quit our game. Now we're almost done. The only real thing we need to do is add a win room. So in here, we might as well go ahead and once again duplicate our room in it. So let me close everything to clean up some stuff. And in here, I'll say right click and duplicate, and I will just name this to RM win, and I will pull it all the way underneath our game. In here, I can delete the init object, and what I want to do is once again bring in a background. So I will create a sprite from image. I'll choose the winner.png. I'll rename it to winner background, and that's all I need to do. Make sure I close it. And back in the room, I want to click on background and choose the correct sprite. You can see we have this here. All I really need to do is add 2 different buttons. I want a retry button. So in here, I could just say right click. Actually, let's duplicate the hard button here. We'll say button retry. And this is going to be up to you where you want it to go. So when they release it, do you want to go all the way back to the menu? So we could say RM menu and get rid of the game difficulty. Or we could just say, you want to go back to the game itself, which is RM game, and just run the game with all the information that we had before. So we want to make sure we also change the sprite. And now in the room, we should be able to drag a retry button out. So we'll say retry. And let's also give a quit option. Alright, let's try this, and let's see how quick we can win our game here. We'll choose the easy mode, and hopefully a little bit of clicking here.
A few moments later.
Alright, so after a while, I've kind of forgotten that we have this winner in here. So what we need to do is actually go to our game object manager, and in the step event, we're going to scroll down here until we do our check. And if we've won the game, instead of doing all this, we want room underscore go to rm, and we named it win. Alright, let's load this up one more time and give it a try.
A few moments later.
Let's see how quick we can do this. And you can see that we have won the game. And let's click retry. We go back and let's choose medium, and that worked fine. The last thing that we'll really want to check is just to make sure that the game over is working. So we'll do easy again. And you can see that we've now won the game. And if we hit quit, our application ends. Now really the only other thing we want to do is kind of get our game ready for publishing. So that would mean in the Windows settings, we fill out the product information. Just want to double check that your room is going to be using 60 frames per second. Even though the game's done and we just changed it to 60, you'll definitely want to try it. Anyway, you can find the full source code for this game on the Patreon channel. I'd like to say thank you for watching. A shout out to Matt and Paul and the anonymous donors that I have on Patreon. Thanks for showing your support, it really helps, and let's get back to the tutorials. Thanks again.